Hi, everybody. I am here with guest Ellen Considine. Ellen, you want to say hi?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me.
Sure. Ellen was a student of mine when I was in Colorado, and I think I taught her from grade 7 through grade 10, something like that. Is that right?
That sounds about right.
Okay. And then after that, I had to move. I didn't have to move, but I chose to move back to Tulsa. And then she studied with Dan Silver for those last 2 years of high school. She did very well. I think as an 8th grader, you were principal clarinet of the Boulder Youth Orchestra. Is that correct?
Sounds right. I don't
I
remember
think
the
that's
years
right. Yeah.
exactly.
She held that position for the entire time, right? Didn't you stay principal, or did it go back and forth between you and Yarrow a couple of times?
Yeah, a little bit of, just moving around. It was
Okay.
fun getting to play with him.
Yes. And we'll all meet Yarrow a little bit later. He's also has an etude dedicated in the book. Ellen and Yarrow were always like neck and neck. And I think even your senior years, weren't you first and second chair in the all-state band?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I think that's pretty amazing. But they were excellent students, and I'm really excited to catch up with you today too. So after high school, Ellen was granted a full ride scholarship for music to attend the University of Colorado at Boulder. But after she got started, she had a little change in pace. Tell us a little bit about what happened and what had you change your direction in your plan.
Yeah, so I had originally started at CU as a double major in clarinet performance and applied math, just because I, like a whole bunch of different things, music included, and was still kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do for school. A little ways into starting at CU, I kind of felt like there were so many things that I wanted to try, and was kind of feeling like, I dedicated so many hours to music over the years, and wanted to be able to give some of that time that I otherwise would have been by myself in a practice room to, trying out some things like undergraduate research and getting involved with Engineers Without Borders at CU. And so I just kind of felt like it was time for a change.
Okay. But do you still play your clarinet?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am continually so grateful for the years that I did practice, because being able to pick up the instrument, because I practice relatively regularly, just kind of all those hours of creating the right technique, or, as close as I could get, kind of puts it in your bones, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it
So
totally
I've
does.
been really grateful for that.
You had a very good practice regimen. Like, she would get up in the early morning because she preferred to do that, and she would practice before school. Which is fantastic. And you were so busy with other things too. So not only with music, but you were also a junior Olympian, right? In cross country skiing.
Yeah, I don't think we called it Junior Olympics, so we called it Junior Nationals, but yeah,
okay.
Anyways, was also spending a lot of hours training for that.
That's a big deal. And when people like you are good at multiple things, I mean, you really kind of have your pick when you're ready to choose a career. So music doesn't necessarily have to be your career just because you're good at it, right? So but
yeah, it's definitely, if you love a lot of things, it can be a little bit heart-wrenching trying to figure out, kind of what paths to choose. And I guess the kind of balance that I found, I'm not like, I don't regret the decisions that I made, but there are certainly moments when I, kind of wonder what else could have been.
Oh, sure. Yeah. But the nice thing about music is it's always there. So anytime you want to come back or dedicate more to it, you've got the skills. Like you said, it's in your bones. You've got the skills. So, but anyway, let's talk a little bit about Foothills Minuet. So this etude is focusing mostly on this movement, F to E, or when you add the register key, C to B. And when I got to that point and I was writing these etudes, I was like, well, that's kind of an easy move. it's not the most difficult finger combination. So I decided to write a slow and pretty song to go with that. And this little minuet just started popping up out of nowhere. And then it just kind of reminded me of Boulder and Colorado and nature and just simplicity. And then that's why I chose this one for Ellen, because she lived in Boulder, and it just kind of brought back a lot of those feelings of just being in nature and just fresh air and all of those wonderful things about Colorado that I miss a lot. So you're going to see in the song that move down low, and you'll see it up high later on in this line here. And with the trill at the end, you get a little bit more of the high version of that as well. The things I would focus on for people jumping in and working on this etude this week are shapes, dynamics. So that's going to be critical to make these lines come to life. See how many little ups and downs there are in this. So really take those very seriously. It's going to make it really pop off the page for you. And having a very smooth legato. So as smoothly as you can play, really connect with your air. And there are a couple of little fingering things that I'll point out in case you might need a little help. Over here, you have E, F, F sharp, this little chromatic move. So on that F sharp, that's a great place to use the chromatic fingering. So you do your thumb and the bottom two side keys. And then later there are a couple of G flats. So same note, just the different name for it. So G flat here and G flat there. You can also use that side key fingering so that you have a smooth transition. What else? Oh, I was playing through this earlier today and I realized this forte may have been a little too much. So you can tone that down and maybe make it a mezzo forte. I was just kind of thinking, take that with a grain of salt. It doesn't have to be like incredibly pushed or, overly loud there. Oh, I did want to say that when I wrote this one, I was kind of reminiscing of the Finzi 5 Bagatelles. And I think you played those. Didn't you play those, Ellen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the fourth movement has that section with the key change. I'll play a little bit from the Finzi, and then I'll show you where that is paired slightly in this piece. So here's Finzi. And then if you look down to measure 22, you get a similar feel of that. Just wanted to point that out, and I'll play a little bit of that. So there's a little bit of that Finzi influence in there, I would call it. And when you think about the tempo for your approach, the minuet. So if you think about like the minuet in G, right? So that's kind of the tempo guide, but you can go slower and make it more expressive. And you could also go quicker and turn it into a waltz if you feel like moving the tempo up a little bit and just have a little fun with it. So Ellen, now that you've had a chance to look through the book and look at this etude, do you have any pointers or advice that you would share with anybody first learning this?
Yeah, one thing that was occurring to me as I was kind of, reading through it myself and then also listening to you talking about this is I remember in kind of those like 7th through 10th grade years when I was working with you, I feel like my ability to just kind of play lyrically and carry the air and kind of the sense of direction in the music really improved. And, listening to your remarks with this, it just reminds me of, kind of all those tips that you gave me too.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, just kind of, as you were saying, like kind of bringing out the shapes of the sound and the just kind of blowing continuously through. And then one thing that I also like about this one a lot, which you highlighted with the Finzi, was that sense of kind of the three kind of not necessarily bouncing, but like waltzing through.
Yeah.
And just kind of bringing out the joy, I guess, that both kind of the rhythm and the notes would.
Yeah.
be.
Now I remember we worked a lot on shaping phrases and tone, also tone concept. I remember that was something that we worked on a lot, and man, you really improved your tone concept. It was just so good when I left, and then even better as you continued studying with Dan. So you really got to a good place with your sound.
Yeah, one thing I remember is talking about kind of the roundness or the warmth of the sound with both you and Dan, and that seems like, you know, a perfect thing to be thinking about for this piece too.
Sure, yeah. I did want to point out that there's also a bass version of this, or I should say low C version of this. I have corrected that language. So there's a low C version on page 48. So this is in C major. So all of these low Cs that you see are going to be low Cs for that low C version. So it's a great workout for working on your low C, your low Ds. There's plenty of opportunity for that in this etude for that low version. So feel free to post both if you own both instruments. I would love to hear that, whether it's a basset or a bass or a contra. I love hearing those low sounds. I don't have a low C instrument, so anytime I hear that, it just makes me really happy. So I love hearing those low sounds. Well, I think that might be just about everything I wanted to point out about this etude. So I'm going to play the first 3 lines just to give everybody a feel for what I was going for. And then of course, later today, I'll record the full version and post that in the group later as well. All right, here we go. Foothills Minuet. I'm going to try to do these shapes as best as I can. All right, well, I'm going to stop sharing and catch back up a little bit more with Ellen. So where are you living now and where are you going to school?
Yeah, so I grew up in Boulder and I went to undergrad at CU Boulder and was planning to move out to Boston for graduate school last year, but because the pandemic, decided to stay another year here with friends and family. But in June, I'm moving out to Boston. And so this current year, I'm in the PhD program at the Harvard School of Public Health,
Nice.
studying biostatistics, which is kind of like data science for public health. So, you know, more people kind of have an inkling of what that means given all that we've heard about COVID in the last year.
I bet. Are you guys studying that specifically? I'm just curious.
There are plenty of people at the school who are studying infectious diseases. I'm more focused on environmental health, so things like air pollution, water pollution, so less communicable, but yeah,
Okay.
it's still been cool hearing all the talks about it.
Okay. What would you say is the biggest problem with environmental pollution?
Well, air pollution globally is, I think, the biggest
Okay.
environmental, impact on health. I'm forgetting exactly how many people the WHO has estimated air pollution, kills or kind of contributes to
Wow.
morbidity for every year, but it's pretty staggering. And I mean, even in the US, plenty of people are impacted by air pollution, especially if a lot of you are familiar with the fires that we had in the late summer and early fall this year. That can certainly contribute to a whole bunch of different health outcomes. And then, in other parts of the world where, especially in urban areas, they just have really terrible air pollution most of the year. That can just degrade your body really quickly.
Yeah. And I remember seeing like masks are kind of like a regular thing in some countries just because the air is so low quality.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
imagine like, we've had this inconvenience is what I would call it of having to wear a mask just this one year. But imagine if you live somewhere where you had to wear it all the time. Oh, that would drive me nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, the masks can get some of the bigger kind of particles in the air, but then some of the smaller particles or the gases can still kind of get into your lungs and affect you. So it's a pretty scary problem, but hopefully we'll be making progress on that in the next couple decades.
Nice. Well, that's really interesting that you're studying that. So good for you for making a difference and being on that side of things to try to correct, all the damage we've done. So
Thanks.
that's
Well,
wonderful.
something I keep in mind is just like, wouldn't it be great to live in a world where everyone had the opportunity to, study things like music and, do sports and, learn all the things there are to know without having to worry about those sorts of health impacts.
Yeah, I agree. That's great. Well, Ellen, thank you again so much for joining us. It's really good to catch up with you. And I look forward to hearing everybody's submissions this week and playing this etude or any other etude from the book, really, because we've got a very flexible schedule. And Ellen, if you ever feel up to playing and you want to join in, you're certainly welcome to do that. I love to hear everybody playing if you want to. And I guess that's about it. I'll see everybody next week, and we'll get going with the next etude next week, and we'll start working on Foothills for tomorrow. Well, thanks again, Ellen, for joining us, and I'll see everybody next time. Bye.
Thanks, Kristen. This
Thank
is a really
you.
cool project.
Thank you. Bye.
Yep.
Oh, it's so good to see you. Oh my goodness.
You too.
It's been a long time.